Hey guys, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. If you're used to seeing me, you may notice that my eyes are a little bit puffy, I sound a little bit stuffed up. We did have another loss on the farm today. I've been crying most of the morning. At the moment, I am trying to distract myself. So just not to keep you waiting, because I don't want you guys stressed out too, I did announce on our community page that we lost one of another baby goat. One that we had planned on keeping as a breeding buck. His name. So we're excited to use him and get that soft udder in as many places as possible. I guess I can't get into it quite yet. So we're just gonna focus on something else productive, distract the mind. What I really have to do today is, so last week I did put up this trellis here for the black-eyed peas. I noticed that my purple hull peas are reaching for a trellis too, and they don't have one yet, so I've got to put another one up on this side. And I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to just get outside, breathe the fresh air, put my hands to work, stay a little bit busy, keep my mind occupied on something else, and get some work done. So this is the trellis that we're working with here. It's a nylon type trellis, and I have been able to secure it up to the purlins on this side. And I was a little bit nervous at first when I put it up, because basically the only other trellises that I've worked with have been cattle panel or field fencing. And so that nylon initially seemed really flimsy, but I think it's gonna hold up pretty nicely. So I've got another one to put over here, got another purlin to attach it to. So let's get busy. So behind me is a lovely scallop squash. It's actually two plants. We're gonna leave those alone. But from here on, I have a couple different bean varieties. There's at least 3, so I guess there's a few different bean varieties here. Not all of them are going to climb a trellis, but most of them are. What I have over on this side is some lima beans. I have some bush beans, Blue Lake bush beans, and we have the purple hulled pink eye shelling peas, and those are the ones that are kind of reaching up for a trellis, and they're going to want to climb very soon, and I need to provide them that trellis in order to climb on. Actually behind them too is another couple different varieties of squash. These over here are a variety of spaghetti squash that is smaller. These fruits get to be about a pound and a half. Got another one in there. When I had initially purchased seed for this squash, it was listed as a bush style variety, so it wasn't supposed to vine out more than about 2 feet from the planting hole. And so I thought it'd be a really good option to grow here in the greenhouse because it wouldn't take over. Well, then I went and saw the reviews after I had already put some in the ground, and we'd already seen flowers at that point. And all of the reviews said this gets huge and takes over, so there's a really good chance that this is going to want to climb that trellis too, which, I mean, I guess it works. So I've got this bar up here, the purlin, that I can attach the trellis to at the top, but I need something to secure it to at the bottom, and that's where these fiberglass poles are coming into play. I'm gonna place one about every 4 feet until we get to that squash up there. These fiberglass poles are something that we've had laying around the farm ever since we bought it, and I have used them a ton in the garden. They have been very useful, and they hold up really well to the weather and the sun. This is the trellis that I'm using. I bought a 60-foot length of it. This is half of it, believe it or not. Each of these rows in the greenhouse are about 30 feet long, so it's gonna work out great. At the moment, the trellis is really kind of flimsy, and this isn't going to provide a whole lot of support. So what I'm going to want to do is make sure that I get this as taut as possible. I'm going to be using just some zip ties to secure this nylon trellising to these fiberglass poles. I'll probably put 3 on each pole. Okay, so now it's relatively taut pole to pole, but because these fiberglass poles are kind of flimsy, they're barely put into the ground, maybe 5-6 inches. When they do have that tension within them or on them, they kind of tend to bend themselves inward. So I have this tomato twine here that I'm going to connect to either end and kind of just pull those ends straight and help keep everything nice and taut. This is something, but we're not done yet. These beans can grow up to 6 feet high depending on the variety, and I do have quite a lot of slack here in my trellis that we're going to be extending upwards with more of this tomato twine. So again, I'm using this purlin for support, and I'm just going to be weaving in the tomato twine all the way down. Alrighty, trellis all up, and now some of these beans need a little bit of coaxing to kind of figure out where to go, what to do. So I'm just going to take some of these longer stems here, kind of just tangle them up a tad into this trellis so that they get the idea that this is where they are supposed to go. These beans don't have little tendrils that will search for the trellis and hook on, and then the vine will grow up. It's like the vine itself wraps around whatever they are trying to grow up. Getting these beans up off of the ground is going to help the plant stay healthy, and it's going to help keep little critters and things out of the beans that we're trying to eventually harvest. So that's the trellis that we just put up, and this is the one that I did last week. I have been coming through and training these black-eyed peas onto the trellis, and a lot of them have gotten the hang of it, which is so awesome. And these guys over here are actually starting to flower, and I see some little bitty peas coming on. I'm still gonna do what I can to come through here and guide any little wayward stems back onto the trellis. Well, these are the first flowers that I've seen coming on in the lane. This is a cucumber. It's either gherkin or the bait alpha cucumbers. These are the male flowers, so they're not directly gonna give us cucumbers, but they'll be part of the process later on. Hi, boys. And a lone chicken. How are you? Hello, handsome. So I was talking a little bit earlier about wanting to do something to distract myself from the pain of losing Hullabaloo this morning. I think to a point distracting yourself is a good thing, but also if you don't acknowledge the things that are painful and deal with them in your own timing, it doesn't have to be right as soon as something hard happens. But that kind of thing can live inside you and eat away at you and cause more harm to you than is really worth. These kinds of things, bad things that can happen on a farm, can do one of two things. They can motivate you to change and do things better, like altering your program for whatever you're doing, or they can drag you down personally and make you feel like you're bad at this, that you're a bad goat keeper and that maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And so I think it's important to acknowledge what's going on, to feel it, and to be able to assess it and move on. But again, it's all in your good timing. Sometimes we need a distraction and an outlet so that we don't dwell and so we don't spiral, and being able to do something and see a progression towards good is really helpful. Doing things in the garden today, seeing those brand new cucumber blooms, it just gives you a little bit of hope. I mean, it's just kind of what you need. It's been a hard week. We've lost 2 baby goats, but I think there's really something to be said for busying your hands, doing something else good on your farm, seeing the other good things that are going on your farm, so that you can kind of absolutely acknowledge the bad and acknowledge the loss and whatever, but also see the weight of how much more good is happening, how much more good is going on that you're responsible for. And those hard things don't hurt so bad after a while. It definitely takes time. I also find it incredibly important to tell you when things go wrong and to show you the bad and hard things, because I want you to know that when bad and hard things happen, that you're not alone. Not everybody shares their life and their journey on social media, but those that do, we do have the power to cut out things that we don't want you to see and make everything seem like sunshine and roses, and like we know everything that's wrong with our herd or good with our herd, and that nothing ever goes wrong. So it's really easy to get on social media and to see all of the good, happy things going on everybody else's farm, and to look at your situation where maybe things aren't as happy all the time and think that there's something you're doing wrong, that maybe you're not qualified. And I want you to know that that is absolutely not true. Part of what makes people good at this thing, at this life, is being able to take the losses, as I mentioned before, grieve them, mourn them, and then learn from them. I think that's the most important thing, and to not give up.
I've heard a story, I've heard it said, I've come to believe that love is a bet. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose it, sometimes it calls you right in the room. Come to my table, come to my bed, go easy my hunger, easy my head, bringing me fire, bringing me water, taking me high.
Here's my babies coming to comfort me. Hi. Okay, this is not a bottle. Oh my goodness. So the little baby that we lost this morning, his name was Hullabaloo, and I've noticed something that I don't know if it's actually a thing, but I figured I'd mention it because I know there's a lot of goat owners on here. There's a lot of hopeful goat owners on here, and I don't want you guys to feel discouraged. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to go sit on the milk stand, aren't I? Because it's gonna be hard to try to take me seriously with all this silly going on. So I don't want all of my current or prospective goat owner followers to feel like goats are this incredibly hard animal to take care of, that they just like to drop like flies. I think that that is a very surface level observation for a deeper issue. And one of the issues that we have in this country with goats is that there isn't any research into goats. There's no research into what ails them, and so there's no research into what fixes them, because goats are not a main like commodity source here in the United States. It's sheep. There is research into sheep, some research that can apply to goats, and then there's research, of course, into cattle and horses and other forms of livestock, but really there's not a lot on the goat front. So we can just sit here and assume goats are hard to take care of, but I think the thing is a lot of goat owners are trying to do things on their own, and we're learning from each other in situations just like this. So us goat owners kind of do what we can with what we have. We have a lot of communications on different forums and online, and we sort of bounce ideas off of each other on what works and what doesn't. And if you're lucky enough to have a goat proficient vet in your area, that is a huge blessing. We do have a couple here. They are kind of far away, but I love them because they both have dairy goat herds and have done very well for us. I haven't called them and asked them about my suspicions, but I kind of wanted to bounce them off of you here and just kind of let you know something that I noticed with the 2 deaths that we have had here in the last week. So we do have a little bout of coccidia running through our barn. It's not really abnormal. It's something that a lot of people have prevention programs for with their management and with medicine. I was speaking to one of my friends who has a lovely dairy goat herd here in Kentucky, and she gives Baycox, or she gives the generic, it's called Toltrazuril. I'll put the words down here. She gives that at 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and then at 9 weeks if needed. And I assume if needed means if maybe they've seen a little bit of coccidia in the herd, or if you're having really wet conditions, because coccidia, a lot like worms, thrives really well in super wet conditions, and we've had a lot of rain here in the last little bit, and it's certainly not helping. Anyways, in speaking with her, I did learn her program, which is what I just talked to you about, which was her giving the Toltrazuril at intervals. So I did give all of the mini La Manchas, all those babies, got got a dose of Trellising this past weekend based on their weight. None of the mini La Manchas had shown any symptoms, but I did it just as a precaution. And as I do, sometimes in the evenings I'll sit down with the goats and watch them and just love on them and take time in order to make the babies nice and social and all that. And in doing that, I was looking at Hullabaloo. This was Monday night. I was looking at Hullabaloo and I pulled down his eyelid and noticed that he was pretty pale on the inside. And when goats have a pale inner eyelid, it means that they have anemia from something. It could mean worms, but it doesn't have to mean worms. Because I had just treated his mother for a worm bout, I decided, okay, you probably picked that up from your mom. Baby goats, if you've seen them eat, they eat right along their mother's snout. Mama will be eating and the baby will be eating right behind her, and so they're eating the same things in really close contact. I figured it was probably a good likelihood that she had passed on some of those worm eggs to her baby, and I treated Hullabaloo with the same dewormer that his mom had. Probably 3-4 days after he had the Trellising, and he was dead this morning. Something that I noticed with Cinnamon, the other goat that we had died a few days, well, I guess probably about a week ago now, is I had given him the Trellising, and then a couple days later gave him Valbazin, and he died within 24 hours. And this is something that I think is worth noting for us goat keepers to kind of keep in the front of our minds when we're treating our animals, because drug interactions is something that has not been studied for goats in the United States. Maybe not even for any animal. I'm not entirely sure. I know that some drugs that go into humans have been studied for interactions, but not all of them. But I just find it kind of interesting that they both had the same kind of set of circumstances happen shortly before their death. Now, correlation doesn't always equal causation, and I can acknowledge that, but it's definitely something to be aware of and to pass on, because it's something that we might notice as goat keepers that ends up being something really important for all of us to know. So I think moving forward, I still will probably treat my herd as I see symptoms happen. So with worms, you're really not supposed to treat on a schedule because you can promote worm resistance by doing so. So I think for us, even though I did, treat all of my mini La Manchas last weekend, I think we probably won't keep a prevention program like that up, because I really am afraid of promoting some kind of resistance with coccidia. But also, I also really like to see which goats do come down with it, which goats do have a really hard time with it, and maybe which goats don't come out of it, because those are goats that maybe I don't want to breed and pass those genetics on. The 3 Nigerians that started up with the coccidia symptoms, those guys, both of their parents had coccidia when they were young and experienced symptoms when they were young. Now, both of them came out of it fine. So in theory, maybe that was a bad immune system combination with that pairing. That was barely in havoc. Maybe that was not a good combination. And I was keeping Hullabaloo back as a breeding bug, but if he was going to be kind of weaker in the immune system, is that something that I want to pass on? And the answer, it really is no. So I am super sad, obviously, to have lost Hullabaloo, but I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because the most important thing to me beyond anything else is strength in my herd as far as their immune system goes. I live essentially in a swamp. We have very wet land here. The dew, even if it doesn't rain, the dew is sopping wet every morning. And so we need goats that are going to be able to handle moist conditions. Moist conditions is not the most ideal situation for goats, but you can adapt them, adapt your herd to be able to withstand the situation that they're in. And that really is my ultimate goal. So Hullabaloo essentially culled himself out of situation, even with as good a treatment as I could manage at the time. He didn't have any symptoms. Nothing was wrong. I just treated him for coccidia just because that's what I was doing at the time, because we lost that Nigerian. So anyways, guys, if you had any experience, I know one other person had commented on the community post about giving Trellising and then Valbazin and losing their alpine goat. If you have noticed something similar, or if you know anything about that, please comment down below. I am going to call my vet and see if she can give me a little bit of insight into that, if she has noticed anything like that. She may ask for pictures, which I did take because I did do necropsies on both baby goats. And I'll be in the comments down below giving you guys information on what my vet said. She may not be able to give us a whole lot because they usually will just base what they know off of the studies. And in this country, there's just really not much. So guys, thank you so much for helping me get through today. This was really helpful. Started the video not being able to say his name, ended the video with being able to say his name. So healing is already happening, and I truly appreciate you being here.
Give me your pretty, give me your messy, give me your happy, give me your sad.